I'll call the meeting, the joint meeting of the Master Plan Advisory Committee, Planning Board to order. This is the August 3rd, 2023 meeting. It is being recorded. Is anybody out there recording the meeting? Hearing none, we will get ready to take a roll call for attendance. So I would ask Jessica Parker to call the roll.
Marcus Phelps,
Here.
David Spina, Doug Moglen,
Present.
Randy Brown,
Here.
David G. Delory,
Here.
Kurt Hansen, Dave McWilliams,
Here.
Norm Cheever,
Here.
Alita De Maria.
Here.
Billy Boyd, Ross Carey, Peter, Corey Rowland, Melissa Topopodon,
Present.
Michael Bowlby,
All right. With that roll call, I'll note there is no majority, no quorum, I should say, for the planning board. There is a quorum for the Master Plan Advisory Committee. Thank you for sharing the summer with us, folks. Anyway, set there, I would entertain. Oh, I'll mention the meeting is being recorded, and of course, as usual, will be posted on our website page. And here comes Roz Terry has joined us. So I will make that on the roll call. I'll set there. Item on the agenda, any public comments or dialogue? Nothing. Okay. Very well. We'll move into old business. I'd like to start out with the review of the master plan draft chapters. And thinking is here, Ken Camilla, Pioneer Valley Planning Commission. Please give us an overview of where we are as far as the chapter submissions and any other things that we need for the layout of the master plan.
I'm sorry. I can't hear you at all, Ken. Is he talking? Can anyone else on Zoom hear him?
No, I can't. I thought we might have been waiting.
Yeah, I thought we were waiting too, but then I saw his arms moving. So I'm sorry, we can't hear you at all. And the audio is pretty bad in general. Like it sounds very distorted when Marcus speaks. So
Wow, interesting. Ken's gonna move up to the table and try again.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you. So the committee has prepared their particular drafts as you have over the past couple of weeks. And so presumably, at least at the onset, it's to look at the drafts. I don't know if there was going to be further discussion based on this evening, but there are comments, outstanding comments on some of them and some questions that will be addressed. But the thought of now moving to a formal plan, graphic presentation of the plan is to address the comments that have been put into the drafts, but formally put them into a plan document. So as they graphically would appear into a final plan. So it'd be like your next review would be the plan, this plan that has had the comments addressed, but in a format that would look like what the final plan would look like. So, you know, I've started to work with a graphic designer based on some of the initial conversations back when we were looking at the Cheshire master plan, to have that as the format for each particular chapters. Working with Corey to retrieve some of the iconography that she used in the introduction that will be used for each of the elements that are in the master plan, as well as working towards basically putting it into a final document. But if there happens to be some further discussion on the chapters, and I see that I think on the agenda, there's an agenda item there. That's where we're at as far as how I presumed in taking a look as they came to the folder, that there are some outstanding questions and comments, but presumably the next time the committee will review these chapters, they will be in a format that will look like what the final document looks like. So that was the plan of the next steps of utilizing what has been posted already, addressing any last comments that have been brought forward, addressing any comments that may be brought forward today, to figure out how to put forward a plan that will incorporate the comments that you identified.
So when the draft plan is put together, that will appear in a different place for us to access, to look at? Or, I mean, now we're looking at chapters, or we're not looking at a whole, or we are?
No, you're not, I mean, what John has posted, which presumably all of you, all have access to, are the chapters at the text, right? And there's some graphics and some tables, but now the next portion of this work is to put it into a plan format. So, like the Cheshire, master plan, 2 columns of text, just cleaning up the formatting of the document, incorporating photos as you identify, that's a conversation tonight. And then, you know, securing what we need to put in the appendix, and what basically would be what a printed plan would look like, with the formatting that you know, is probably typical of a master plan, and the chapter that the committee has identified as one that they want.
Okay, we'll go around here for comments from the committee members. I've been informed Marissa has hand up.
Yes, hi, good evening, folks. Ken, a question. Some of these chapters, I've reviewed them, some a little bit more carefully than others, but I've looked at all of them, and some of them have been extensively changed, and I'm talking for Dave and myself. We've changed our chapter a great deal, and kind of in terms of what's been included, editing for accuracy, but then also extensive changes to the action items. Are those changes that we presented, are those the ones that PVPC is going to use when taking it to the next stage of kind of finalizing it? I mean, obviously subject to comments, but I'm not quite sure how the work that we've done at this point, when we paired off, if PVPC is going to take that wholesale, obviously again, subject to comments, or are you going to extract from what we've proposed in those chapters and put them into the previous chapters that PVPC had developed? I guess, what's the methodology? So how you're planning on working on them? Thank you.
Taking your comments and taking a look at the way that you've presented each of those solutions. I think what I gathered during this entire process, especially in hearing about a previous master plan not being adopted, this is your work, this is the work of the committee, and, you know, PUPC has initially provided you some, recommendations that are reflective of either best practices that have worked elsewhere, that have worked within the context of the issues that have been identified, both through the survey, both through the community meetings. So I think, Marisa, to your point, I think this particular step is to take a look at the product that each of the chapters have produced and put it onto a plan. I think there may be some formatting, as far as trying to create, a universal, and I take yours as an example. I think that there was, a particular, the way that you had split it up into 3 different types of, areas. Identifying if there's any additional language that would need to be introduced there, just to make sure that it's consistent with, other chapters. I think that but for the most part, I think the comments and the recommendations you've made and changes for the actions are the ones that we're going to be putting into the plan, unless there's, you know, disagreement among the group.
So I have a question. Is the one
Oh,
that?
Roz, could please
Yep.
just, yeah, green light.
Okay.
Oh,
Can you hear me now?
not so
It's
much.
green.
Is it green? Tap it. It's there.
So I just have a question, just so I'm sure that we're all looking at the right thing. In the Google Drive, we're looking at the all caps updated chapter drafts.
Correct.
Okay. Just wanted to make sure. So everyone should check and make sure their draft is their final draft.
Correct.
I
warmed
it up.
I have 2 questions. One is, we've got the revised kind of vision statements that sound like the same voice.
Sure.
I went to try to edit on one, but I didn't have any edit right. So do you want me to just send those to you and you can plug those in? Or?
You can,
Yeah,
I mean, I think, oh, so yeah, I don't think everyone has that right. That's fine. If you have each of the chapters and revised vision statements, that would.
yeah, I actually have them all on one page.
There you go. Yeah, that's fine. You can just share them and I'll plug them in, because at this point, it will be going to the graphic designer. So, you know, if that's new text that is agreeable, then we just put that as the plan.
And the second question is, we've been kind of waiting to write the executive summary until everyone's kind of, so I've deliberately not been reading anything else because I don't, in this case, there are changes.
Yeah.
When do you think we're at the point where they're baked and then we can start? I mean, that's a question for everybody, I guess. So that we can go in and look and say, all right,
I think based on, you know, however today's meeting goes and the changes that will need to be made to each of the chapters based on the comments, existing comments or questions, addressing them. Presumably the versions that I sent to the graphic designer will have those corrections or those questions addressed. And those would be, for the most part, the most complete version. I think there's going to be some small changes after it's formatted in a way that is presentable to the community, but I think the version that I end up sending to the graphic designer would be the version that is probably the most complete.
all right, well, we would kind of want to get you the exact summary and give the committee a chance to look at it before you go. Do you have like a day in mind when?
Probably next week, I mean, probably Wednesday of next week.
Wednesday of next week, it would be in the,
It will be, and I will address the comments of whatever's in here. And then those will be the chapters that I end up sending to the graphic designer that will have had the comments or some of the questions addressed. The next time you'll be seeing the addressing of the comments, unless I were to bring it, to, the attention of the people that wrote the chapter, is in the format that will be the plan format. So you'll have an opportunity to do some additional edits at that point. But the next time you see your draft, it will be in the presented format. And Corey, that means then the Wednesday that I have set to give to the graphic designer, you'll have all of the chapters. Basically, that.
Okay, but you would need the exact summary before that.
Yeah,
So
I
how are
mean-
you gonna write it and get the committee to approve it before less than a week?
Well, I think that is probably the last thing, and it doesn't matter. The committee will see the chapters in the format that is going to be included in the final document. I don't think you're gonna see a full final document, because obviously.
It's not like ready for.
Right, it's not gonna be ready for print.
So I was gonna say, you just ruined my weekend. then.
No.
So the next meeting is August 17th.
Right.
So we would have, and I have had an opportunity to look at the document in the format, master plan format,
Correct.
August 17th. So then any feedback should happen there or at that meeting.
Well, will we have it before the 17th so we could review it prior to coming in here?
Probably, it's going to be at the mercy of my graphic designer, obviously. So I'm hoping that it's gonna be that Monday of that week. But again, I think the opportunity here is, I know that, I think the intention is to have all of this approved, or at least in a pathway to approval by the end of September. There may be an opportunity to present the final draft plan as the way that it's printed, either to the committee at the September meeting, and then figure out what that pathway moves forward, how that pathway, moves forward, but the intention is to get you the chapters in the graphic new format by that Monday of the 17th. And then, have you address any last comments? There are 5 weeks in August, so I think that gives us an additional week for you to review. So presumably, depending on the last Friday in the month. Getting those any last edit.
Because the schedule I have, and I talked with John about, is to present it to the planning board, probably the second meeting they have in September. And depending on how many hearings and so forth are on that meeting agenda, we need a good piece of time to do, a presentation.
Yes.
Okay. Any other comments?
Yes, so I
Mr. Cheever
I
has.
think we should continue on with this line of content now, because until you see the gap analysis, it may change everything. But they want to talk dates, it's talk dates after you see the gap analysis.
Which is on the agenda under new business.
Yes.
So any other comments from the committee? Marissa?
Yes.
Yeah.
Just another comment for, or question for clarification's sake, and maybe I missed this because of the audio, but in terms of the August 17th date, that's the date by which PVPC should have comments in terms of the content of the chapters and the graphic layout. Is that?
17th is going to be the graphic layout with the comments that are included into, so it's going to be what is the near final draft of that chapter. Based on the current drafts that are in the folder, the Google folder. And that will be graphically laid out with the comments addressed, the questions addressed. And I think if there are any drawing attention to any sort of big red flags, we can also, pull those out and figure out how to address them. But the version that you're seeing on the 17th, or we'll be talking about on the 17th, will be what could be the final version based on this draft that's in the folder.
So what's the date then? Okay, so that's for the graphic component and kind of the final content as well of the chapters. What's the last date that we can get comments to? That's my next question. What's our deadline for getting comments about the chapters? Because I do have kind of a list of different comments that I wanted to bring up to each chapter, relevant to each chapter, but I'm just unsure at this point if it's PVPC that's handling the finessing of these chapters from this stage onward, or is it still the people who were working on the chapter on the committee side? Who do I guess, present those comments to for discussion or consideration? By when, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a good conversation for this evening, for the committee. Obviously, the last set of, based on the current calendar that we're kind of operating under, based on some of the initial decision this evening, it seems as if trying to have final comments by the end of the month is the goal for them to turn around a final plan that has those comments addressed. So presumably, any individual comments for other chapters by committee members probably would need to be either, I don't know, you can,
Soon.
yeah, very soon.
I would think, if you have comments on another chapter, you send them to the authors of the chapter. They may have some reasoning or some insight into why certain, why things were written the way they were written. And at the same time, CC John Goddard, I guess, who else? I don't know. Maybe Ken, you,
But yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, I can assist, as far as, I think. Maybe
speak up,
understand.
speak up.
I can assist, I guess, with the conversation if that arises, but at the end of the day, I think this is a committee document, so it is. However, the committee feels it's like it's a final thing that can be printed, it's really up to the committee.
I would share it with the authors, and then on the 17th, if there's still some questions as to someone really wants something in a chapter or wants something taken out. The other item I was thinking about, if there's some duplication and overlap, PVPC, you've got to pick up on that. If someone's written an action item and said, it's in our chapter and some other chapter has used it or referred to the same thing, those kind of have to be worked out. Because we're not, as individual authors of chapters, we're not, seeing things as a whole. Any other comments? So the Monday before the 17th, we're looking at a draft of the master plan being available.
I will say that the chapters and at least the intro, so the things that are on the Google Drive, obviously the appendix needs to be built, which will include survey responses, acronyms, all kind of those.
Yeah.
pieces.
All right. We will move on to new business. And the first item is a little discussion of images. And we have Jason, can't say your last name.
I'm not, oh, let's see, oh, here it is.
No, apparently nobody can say my last name, so
Listen, I know I can, I'm not gonna own up to that one.
So,
it's Jagger. Jagger.
Jagger.
Say his name.
Anyway, Jason does a lot of drone photography, aerial photography of Southwick.
Yes.
So, as far as availability of images, thought, and he was asked to maybe share some things and get some feedback from the committee as to maybe there's something he has available that would be useful for the plan. I don't know, Ken, Camilla, what types of images, how many images are you interested in having?
I guess it really depends on how the committee wants its report to look. Obviously, we want it to look pretty, so we're gonna have a beautiful front page and some interior photos. But I imagine that maybe each chapter has one or two, either, especially like a historical chapter. And we have some photos, ourselves. I know we have an inventory of a couple. But I presume that, you know, if there are special photos or images that you want in the chapter, we would incorporate it accordingly. But
Will those be in this document? The images you're proposing, will they be in the document that we're gonna see before the 17th?
if,
Of August?
yeah, I mean, if it warrants, yes, you know, a photo that I would determine, but presumably, if there are like general community photos or event photos that you'd like to include, I have some photos that we're gonna incorporate into the community section, or the introduction that talks about, you know, how we met people and the survey, and so those types of graphics to be presented in the document. But any sort of large formatted photos, you know, I think if the committee has interest, that's something that, you know, we can definitely include.
So anyway, Jason?
Yes.
Oh,
I have right now queued up, I have 30, give or take 30 photos that are all from around Southwick of various farms of downtown of like the churches and everything. And I thought I'd show those off. If you guys would like different photos, I have absolutely no problem going out and taking a photo of anything you want. So you could just send me to an area of Southwick and just be like, capture this. And I have no issue going out and grabbing that for you. If you'd like to share the screen with me, I could actually load up
for a
photos.
speed show here?
Yep.
Yeah, I could do a speed show. One second here so I can adjust this real quick.
That's great.
Okay, give me one quick sec.
You may have to work something out with Ken on the size of the. What do you say? The size of the,
The resolution.
I could do any resolution settings Ken wants as well. Okay. Nope, I think I got it. I got it. All right, so you guys can see it now?
Yep.
so we're all gonna take notes. This is slide number 1.
Correct. I
And we're gonna
believe.
Vote at the end of all 30. Oh, boy. No.
No,
Okay.
I'll just quickly flip through them for you and tell you where they were. This one I actually believe was the backside of Blossoming Acres. This is, I forget the name of the farm, but it is on Coes Hill Road. It is right up at the top of Coes Hill. This was from last year's boat parade. You have Middle and South Pond here with the road running through the middle. This was also Blossoming Acres. This is Middle Pond looking toward North Pond. This is Middle Pond looking toward South. This is the little farmland that's right beside Middle Pond. This is North Pond. That's Wally Park in Hull. That is also Wally Park looking toward the schools. That is the church. I forget the name of it. Christ Lutheran, I think. That is the covered bridge that's actually on that little roadway right here off College Highway. I forget what the name of the road is, though. There's your creek going through town. That is Feeding Hills Road looking toward Westfield and Agawam and the solar panels. This is looking from, I'm gonna say Point Grove, maybe? Yeah, this is from down Point Grove looking back this way, back toward College Highway at the back of the church. This was just a shot that was taken over the fishing pier. This is fog over Middle Pond. Fog over North Pond. This is the Southwick Church in a snowstorm taken from my apartment. Here is Saunders. This is from Saunders, looking at the marina. That's the Saunders Marina, a different angle. This is actually by the water towers here, looking into Granville at all the foliage. This is downtown, looking toward Westfield. Here is Middle Pond with a lot of boats on it. Southwick Inn. That is the church, the steeple of the Congregational Church, looking at the sunrise. There's the Congregational Church. And that's the last photo that was actually looking toward Granville from College Highway catching a sunset.
I have
So-
Really?
Two votes.
Already?
The church with snow and the one that shows the lakes, but not a whole lot of boats and a whole lot of other stuff. Those are my 2 votes. I'm done.
Sounds good to me.
That one earlier, like.
You know, the other thought is seasons. Do we have, you know, a mix of
Yeah,
seasons?
we need a fall one.
For spring,
But fall one.
fall, it's nice, I guess, catch that. Mr. Cheever, lake person, did you see one that got you?
Like them all.
All the lake photos are acceptable.
I have probably 20,000 shots of the lake, believe it or not.
We're gonna narrow that down.
I think the other thing that's been pretty well received a lot now is the memorial by the Congregational Church that was recently renovated and so forth.
I have some recent shots of that as well.
Can't hear anything.
She
I
can't-
just said, oh, sorry.
Yeah.
I'm not quite sure who said it, but we are in New England, and I think it'd be a really good idea that we had actually something from each season. There was one from the snow, there's a couple really good ones in the fall.
Mhm.
We could find something floral from the spring and, you know, the lakes for the summer. We keep going with this New England character, New England tradition, all that, so I think that, I mean, the one thing, I don't know about the rest of you guys, but the one thing I love about New England is we have horses. Like, we got
Sometimes in the same.
it.
Yeah. I thought we only had hot and cold.
Yeah, I have boatloads of seasonal photos with the foliage, the middle of summer. I have spring flower photos. I have it all for you guys.
Someone from the public, Diane Gale, has a hand up.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear.
In those photos, I just noticed there was nothing of our industrial parks, Hudson Drive or the one on Southern College Highway. Just saying.
You were correct. I actually don't have photos of the industrial park, but I can get some for you. I have photos of the rock ditch in the back or the dirt ditch in the back, but I don't actually have photos from the industrial park, but I can go out tomorrow and get some.
It's great because it's under construction right now and looks like it's growing, which is a good thing. If the
All right.
committee chooses. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, no, I think, there's some good photos there, and I think typically when we put together elements or put together the chapters, thinking about each chapter, as, you know, if there's a housing chapter, maybe a subdivision, maybe some mixed use, something like that. Open spaces, obviously, there's many resource areas that you have here, land use that, solar fields, and land, not solar. Economic development, as Diane was talking about, development that's actually happening and having a photo of that. So there definitely are, you contextualize each chapter like with an image that presumably that Jason would have.
Yeah. And I think we have to have like a mix of the aerial and the
Yes.
ground level types of photos. Okay. John, as a note, I believe I mentioned in the past that David Pierce has photographs. I know he was the official photographer for the 250th anniversary. And also Russ Anderson, police chief, or not police chief, retired fire chief, has some images, probably. And maybe some of those were, you know, ground level type pictures.
We also should have some people, right? So we're talking about, there's a lot of reference and a lot of things about being a town for people of all ages, families. We have an aging population, things like that. So I think we need to show actual data, you know, it's not just about buildings, beautiful land and things like that. It's about people who like living here. People like to see themselves when they read a plan.
So good headshots there.
We could take shots of each one of the member of the committee. So John and Ken and Jason need to get together as far as what we would use from Jason. Maybe 4 or 5 most, to capture what we are getting feedback on. Some specifically, talking about a fall image, farm image, related to the chapters. I don't know if we want an aerial associated with each chapter, or is that gonna be too much, I wonder?
And I think you can intersperse them, like was mentioned, to mix them in with the sections that are appropriate. You have a picture of the Moore House or something in the historical one, in a subdivision or in the industrial park.
So we'd have a mix of aerial and
Oh, yeah.
And the
Ground
graphic
level
designer
for
is
each
pretty good from what I hear.
of the chapters
Yeah,
and the overview also,
right.
to show people, faces, a variety of people, variety of ages.
John looked in 25 million.
Question, Brian, please.
Oh, go ahead. Marissa, hand up, yes.
Yes, I just wanted to mention to the committee that the Agricultural Commission's Open Farm Day is happening August 20th, which I realize is a bit after this date, but we'll be taking high-res photos of that day for future AgCom marketing purposes. But the idea behind that day is that there will be families, so we could capture kind of the intergenerational component. But the whole idea behind Open Farm Day is that we get to see the operations of the farm too. So that could dovetail with not just open space, which I think the aerial photos, perform very nicely, but actual farm operations and agricultural industry, like the behind the scenes look of how farms are actually working and industrious. So again, I realize that's slightly after the date, but we're also kind of a week behind since we missed that meeting in July. So if there are good photos from that, I'd hope that the committee and PVPC would consider adding those graphically to this plan.
I think that is perfect, the type of event that, you should be captured.
So we'd have a placeholder.
Yeah.
For a farm picture of some kind now. Okay.
What's the date of that again?
August 20.
Oh, the farm day? Yeah. Saturday?
Sunday.
Sunday?
Yeah.
Oh. I better know. Okay, any other comments from the committee on photos? We gotta have a tobacco barn and,
Maple syrup bucket.
what's that?
Maple syrup bucket.
Maple syrup.
Oh. Yes, Scott Lehman is pushing for a maple tree with a bucket hanging on it, so I don't know, we might put that on the cover, but. Anyway, appreciate Jason joining us tonight and all your exciting work you do, producing interesting images around town.
Thank you. I appreciated being here tonight.
All right. Second item under new business is something that Norm Cheever said he would be doing, looking at the chapters as they've been drafted and seeing if there's anything that we missed. So it sounds like we might have to buckle our seat belts, but I'll turn it over to Norm to share what he has found.
This didn't get sent out to us yet, right?
Pardon?
Don't even check.
Thank you. I have a handout, but it's not gonna go out just yet because I'll lose you as soon as you get it. Before I hand it out, I want to the process that I use, so you understand it. I went through each of our forums, the SWOT survey, our vision, themes, focus groups, and we hear you. And I went and listed items that I thought were significant for each of those areas. And there was 177 items of interest.
That the public provided, 177 items.
So then I tried to put a chapter owner to them. And then I went through each and every action item. And tried to determine where it covered something that was on that list of 177 items. Okay. And if it had coverage, then it got a gray color. If it had no coverage, it got a yellow color. If it was partially covered, it got an orange. And if it was conflicting coverage, that is the action item conflicted with the public interest, it got a blue. There's only 5 of those, so we'll get to those later. So that's the process I did. And now we can hand this out.
Can I ask you a question before we get too deep into this?
Yeah.
Right, so when you say,
Use the microphone, please, so we can hear. Please, Dave.
all right, so okay, so when we're looking at this and you're saying there are points of interest, right?
Right.
Or things that came up.
Yeah.
Did you assign a percentage? Is it 10% of the respondents, 20%? So, I mean, how do we know it's significant to what the public wants? There has to be some criteria to use.
It did vary from one to another. Basically, like from SWOT, if it was the top 4 or 5 items on the list, I put them on it. If it was a survey, I actually went through every question and said, is there anything of value here that should be on there? And if there's a multiple list, I might have taken the top 5 or 6, depending upon how they segregated it out. And then, focus group is the same thing as I did for SWOT. You know, pick the top 2 or 3, 4, depending upon what it was. And then, did we hear you? It was basically the same process, but there were fewer inputs. Okay. So what I did, this is what a typical page would look like. I'm not going to go to any discussion on that, but just you can see the different colors there. But here's the start of the thing. And I'm so glad I did this because it opened my eyes. Of 177 items that were listed, only 65 were fully covered, 37%. 23 items were partially covered, 13%. 84 items had no coverage at all, 48%. Items with conflicting opinion, 5 to 3%. So then what I did was I went through each of the ones that were either covered or not covered or partially covered, and I tried to put my evaluation on, is this a significant item? Is this a minor item? Is this a medium item? Or is this a granularity item? By granularity, I mean, the survey went down to very low levels, and the action item might have been a couple levels higher and didn't include everything. Okay. So I'm not overly worried about granularity. I'm more worried about the significant items that were not covered or partially covered. And that is 44% of the items that weren't covered were significant. Okay, so I think there's some value here for us to go back and relook at some of them. So now I'm not going to discuss the items in full coverage because no coverage, we're going to look at that one next. Okay, so let's go to the top of it. And this is sorted by significant. For the very first one, water shortages caused by climate change. No coverage. I rated that as significant. So my view is, climate group ought to go back and think about adding something to that. Agricultural development. There's a lot in there about agricultural support for current farmers. There wasn't a lot in there for new development, new farming, new crops. And so there's no coverage of that. Business development. Again, there's a lot of ideas out there about business, but there's no plan. We haven't put together a plan, except today I did see the incubation, the thing that came in from Econ. Generally, how are we gonna bring the business? Nothing in this, we'll address that.
Nora, how much of this though will come from the implementation?
What's that?
How much of this should come from the implementation committee, like the specifics? So we identify the why and the what, and the implementation committee really develops the how, like, all right, we're listening to everything you said, but this is the specifics of what we believe the town should do and what we're gonna ask for funding to do and things like that.
Here's my response to that. This final product will be somewhere between 1,500 and 1,800 pages long.
No, really?
Yeah.
That's ridiculous. I'm sorry, but that I just think that's too much.
Well,
I really do.
How long is Cheshire?
No,
Order of magnitude,
and they're not. I mean, this is just supposed to be a guide.
Plus
For
the
the-
appendix.
How much, I'm
well,
sorry.
the appendix is gonna be,
The appendix is obviously.
it's gonna be huge.
Yeah, well, let's not talk about the appendix, so the actual meat plan is typically what?
Yeah, I would say that each chapter at least is, as you saw, 10+ pages, right? So it's going to be maybe 100% of that document, including, as I said, the summary and the introduction. It's the appendix, and whatever looks in the appendix, we can figure out what that looks like. But yeah, as far as a document for the town, typically they run anywhere from 50 pages to 100.
Right. Not 1,500.
So my concern is it's not gonna get the attention that we've given it.
But I think my question still holds. How much of what, and I'm not saying what you've uncovered isn't important. Because like you say, water, we were talking about, climate change and water shortage, particularly in the agricultural community. But the how specifically, what are the actions we're gonna take, should be the implementation committee. So the master plan will say, here's the issue, and here's the direction we think you should look. Now, implementation committee, take what you think is it real, can we do it, is it worth it? And put together your plan to achieve that. That's kind of the next step I think this is strategy. So the next step of strategy is execution, and that's a different team.
I don't think they'll see all this.
You
If
can
you don't point it
provide,
out, they're gonna miss.
you can provide this document to the implementation committee. We're not saying this isn't worthless. It's very great. It's great information. But the plan that we're putting together is supposed to be a general guide to the, I don't want to say politicians, but the different committees within the town to try to reach some goals that the community feels are important. It's not the nitty gritty details of how it's going to be done. This is supposed to be a very general for each section as to what the town is feeling, what direction the different boards should take, and what direction the implementation committee should help them get there, whether it's funding or it's, public meetings or things like that. I, by all means, I do not think that this isn't a great document. I'm just not sure it's the right timing. That's all.
Well, I just leave it,
You can,
okay?
yeah.
I'm sorry, I disagree with that because I feel the implementation committee, the way that it's been presented to us, it's very much supposed to be the how, but the how is only possible if you know what the outlines are for what people want to see in the town. When I was going through the chapters, 8 chapters that we have, I did the same exact thing that Norm did, and I found gaps, and that's why I'm concerned that there isn't cohesion between all the public events that we've done. We need to remember that the public, ultimately they're the biggest stakeholders in this. They've paid for this plan. There's a degree of accountability to the public to make sure that the majority views that they've expressed get implemented and are at least considered as an action for the implementation committee to then figure out the details of how, when, what the time frame is. I get that, that's the implementation committee, but I do think that there's holes in that we're not necessarily fulfilling, some of the majority views that have come out. I found that as well. So I'm delighted that you made this, Norm, because I have a whole list of like the SWOT stuff, the survey, the public meetings that we've had, and I've corresponded them each to like chapters, and I've been going through the chapters specifically to find if those majority views have been there, and I have found some gaps. So that's what I was planning on writing to the authors of each chapter about. So this is actually really helpful, and I don't think it actually has to do with the how. I think it's just identifying something that could be an action item, and then the how of it, I don't think we should delve into that. I don't think we have the time or the purview, but I think that's the implementation committee. But how are they going to know what to even implement if we don't identify the bigger points? I mean, is the implementation committee going to go through the survey results, through the SWOT analysis? I don't think so. That's our job, right? So aren't we supposed to be specific and not too general? I mean,
Yes, but I'm looking at things like splash pad, tennis courts and all of that, that's way too granular for a master plan.
but those aren't the big majority things that are missing. The majority things that are missing are, I think, are the kind of bigger picture themes that you can develop an action item or two for. I don't think an action item is going to make a splash pad. I think it's talking to things like, I mean, I just saw something there, poor recycling record. The climate change chapter has nothing about this, about how much waste we generate as a town systematically, what that means about our waste transfer station. There's been no inclusion of that, and that's a pretty major theme. So to me, that's a gap, and that's something that came up in the survey as well. So it's like, it's both a gap. It comes out in the pamphlet that you get every time you get a waste transfer sticker. You know, how we're a community that's not doing enough recycling or waste management across the Commonwealth, and it came up in the survey. So it's like we have two big data points there. Why isn't that in the climate change chapter or sustainability chapter?
Right, Marissa, I agree with that, and I agree with the fact that the water shortage, if it's not included, like I said, I deliberately not read the chapters yet, but some of the stuff is in the vision statement, so I'm assuming it shows up in the chapters. So maybe it's just an issue of, and it's hard when it's one person trying to do all the work and it's their idea of how to categorize it, because I've been in that role too. So maybe it's just the fact that something like water shortage caused by climate change is listed as significant, which it is. And then splash pads and tennis courts are listed as significant, which I would argue are not. So maybe if we can stay at the water shortage level and make sure those types of issues are addressed. And then we're just not going to have, I don't think the chapter people are gonna have time to address some of the other things that perhaps are less significant. But after everyone reads the chapters and gives feedback to the authors, then in the end, the authors have to say, okay, you're right, we forgot that. But I don't think it rises to the same level as something like water shortage. And so we chose not to.
So can we agree as a committee that if there is a big omission like that thematically, that should be an action item? Otherwise, how is the implementation committee going to have the roadmap to know where to start with this? I mean, it's nice that it's in the vision statement, but that's not the point of this plan. The plan is to come up with the roadmap effectively for the implementation committee. So we don't have to go to the granular level. I agree, Corey, but I think that then translates, and I think we're in agreement that that probably should become an action item. If, especially if it's being addressed in the vision statement, but not appearing as an action item. Otherwise, what's the point of having that even mentioned in the vision if there's no roadmap for the implementation committee to kind of go off of?
So Norm, basically, page 1 and 2 would be the important areas for the chapter authors to look at and consider these items. And apparently there weren't, and mainly it's economic and open space and public service, right? Those are the chapters you're saying.
Basically, two, a little bit in open space, they already, it's not a lot of open space. But I think economic development and public service are the two big ones.
Okay.
Okay. Now, one of the things that I'm concerned about is if the public reads our action items. They come back and they don't see some granularity in there, and say, you didn't listen to it. I want a flash pad, why isn't that in there? I want a pickleball, why isn't that in there?
Gonna happen. No matter how perfect we do it, that's going to
Well,
happen.
You're absolutely
Yeah,
right.
we can't,
I think
can't look.
The planning board is gonna have to field those questions if they accept
Doug, what do you
this
have?
plan.
Well, I think,
But Doug, you may have to, please.
oh, sure, Mike, I'll be glad. Thank you. Well, I think this just, first of all, this is a huge undertaking. Thank you, Norm, for doing it. I mean, this is unbelievable work. And I know, you know, reading some over the chapters, it occurred to me, and I'm sure to everyone else, that there appear to be some gaps in here. And I think what we need to do is to take a look at these and maybe take some of the subjectivity out of it. So no offense to Norm, but what Norm may seem as significant, someone may see that it's nothing. And then later on in the list, there might be stuff that others, especially with their own chapter, might say, hey, this is highly relevant. And oops, I missed it. I should go back and do it. So I think you can take a little bit of time here to get this right. Pick something, the water issue, maybe that is a big issue. And, to others, there are other things in here that may be, significant. I also have a question, and I'm not quite sure how to phrase it, but I'll direct it to Ken first, is from a master plan, is it actually a document frozen in time, or does your master plan get revised over shorter iterations along the way? I'm not saying every month, but over a year or 2 years as the implementation committee comes to some progress and says, well, maybe we need to update the master plan to include or discount certain things in there as they come to fruition or are determined to be no longer needed or what have you.
Yeah, for sure. And I think as the implementation committee will create its scheduled meetings, there will be an opportunity after a year, after 2 years, to see how the strategies and the recommended actions are either being met, or if there is some hardship that is time-wide that basically eliminates one of those actions. I think, yeah, it's truly a living document. The town may want in 10 years to find funding for another master plan update, and it will be to look at the status of the particular actions, see where they are, and you're going to create some new actions. So it is a living document. I think the entities that are responsible for implementing, depending on how strong the implementation committee is and how often they meet, I think will definitely probably address changes or like updates pretty frequently.
I think in my bullets, the notes I made for the executive summary, we put in there something like we recommend a triennial review or even a biennial. I should have asked you this at the start, Norm, so, because I'm seeing some things in granularity that I think are significant.
Well, that's good.
Uh,
Point, right?
But I see things as significant that I think are not, so what, I forgot to ask at the beginning, like, what criteria did you use to kind of make your cohorts?
Well, for instance, I put granularity for a lot of different types of business, office business, healthcare business. Because we need a plan to bring it into business. It doesn't matter if it's office or healthcare or, so then I would say, what's the bigger thing is let's get business development underway and what type of business is more important. But we should disagree on the ratings here.
Okay.
Now, I said at the last meeting, I was concerned about the school. There's virtually nothing in the action items about the schools with minor exceptions of some ideas in open space.
Well, your microphone died.
Open space could have something on schools about getting people involved in conservation. But other than that, there's almost nothing in here. It covers 47% of our budget is school environment. And we don't have anything in the plan for the school environment.
47% today. It's gonna, you know,
Well,
it's a good point,
yeah,
A lot of our budget goes to the school.
right.
and it's gonna continue.
So we should make it kick-ass.
So, you know, and I can't imagine not bringing something forward.
And that would be under public facilities and
Right.
service.
Right.
Okay, so that's a definite gap. That,
You know,
I don't know who would address that, but,
Not public service, that's cool. Public service.
yeah, that was Dave Delory and, Dee Delory and, Patrick Jubb.
Did we lose some, Patrick?
we're losing.
I should interject that announcement, maybe. Mr. Jubb has resigned from this committee. So, it's been a kind of a one-person chapter writer, which I just found out.
Any of that done?
But I mean, when we're talking about the
Well,
school.
we gotta have microphone here.
So when,
That's why it takes so much of this, right? I guess, yeah.
just right.
Told him plenty of things to talk about.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly.
No,
Talking from the
not
school
working.
perspective, he's our expert, right? He's on the school committee.
Yeah.
So him not being here makes a difference.
Yeah.
There we go.
In conclusion,
well said, David, well said.
is there a plan to maybe, and I know we're like on the 5-yard line going into the touchdown here, and you know, we don't want it back
It's
up.
baseball season, come on.
So it's football season, training camp's going on right now.
Bases are loaded.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, do we want to recruit somebody else to help David with the education? I mean, no offense, Dave, I don't know if you know about the education system.
My kids have been out of school for a year.
Yeah, so does he need someone to write check?
that could even.
So we're gonna have to pull from
PPC.
whatever resource we have and
That's a good point,
They're
Jessica.
the experts at this, right? I mean, they're the ones that have written the master plans. We might have changed a lot of the actions that you guys put forward, but for me personally, like, I was in the climate one, and I do agree that the water shortages was probably a miss, but to be honest with you, I don't know what, I don't know exactly what a good action would be for that, and I think there's some pieces where like PVPC maybe can help guide us, or maybe people that have read the other chapters have ideas on that, but it doesn't all have to come from us. We do have a resource.
Right. Good point. And on the school side, the, being part of a regional district, and I think it's part of the composition of the master plan especially now with Mr. Jump vacating, you know, from where I sit, we see it as a budgetary pressure. We don't operate the schools direct, right? We have an elected school committee, almost like another government unto itself. So, but it's an important part of the allure of your town and your property values and why young people would want to come here. And that's the micro. The macro is people are leaving Western Mass in droves, and the schools suffer from declining enrollment and the pressures that are going to continue to come from that, and the burden that that places on the remaining, on the tax base. Plus, you know, how do you scale a school in order with a declining enrollment? You know, that's going to be a continued challenge. And from a master planning, I don't know that we have a lot of say in it from the town of Southwick master plan, other than we are today 80-something% of the district by funding, so, and by population. So that should be our input to it. But Norm's right, I think, and it was noted earlier too, that, you know, we were a little light in this space, but that is a certain challenge that needs to be met head on by the master plan, because as the budget for the schools has been trending upward. There's also been on a macro level that from the state, their educational foundation budgeting process has changed, or the funding formula keeps changing, and to the detriment of communities of rural character or Western Mass, and focus strictly on a very small subset of the overall school districts. And that's going to create pressure on the services that a town can provide, given the budget that they need to sustain a school, or what that does to taxes. So it is a big pressure in the master plan on how we want to do all of this stuff. And this, you also have this elephant in the room.
So who do we need to help with this other than Ken Camilla with other communities, I guess, views on that, on schools?
Schools, if I
Yeah.
can, sure. Schools always like big elephant in the room, particularly if you're in a regional district. And in the experience that I've had in working with the communities and doing their master plans, schools, if they're being addressed, it is, especially if there's sentiment that there seems to be advocacy for the schools, like continue to support the school, or, you know, and those are the types of actions. How that happens, implementation committee, I don't know. But if those are the types of actions that are not going to rock the boat, that, you know, that may be more palatable for the committee to say, that's a good action. But I think I can take a look and see if, from what I was able to glean when we looked at the survey, and, you know, when I looked at schools, and yes, they were, you know, support the schools, and there were things about curriculum. But again, sometimes those things are addressed by the school committee, and sometimes schools in the master plan are like, school committee will address, you know, and that's an action. Work with the school committee to address the school.
But we can still forward proposed actions. They're kind of like the implementation committee for their little world, but we can still propose actions to them, can't we?
So we could still propose some actions for the schools that the school committee would be made aware of.
Yeah.
I'm repeating it because
Oh, I thought
there
you
was
didn't hear
no
me. You said
microphone.
the exact same thing. I was having deja.
Sorry, there's an echo in the room. So are we saying Ken Camilla, and I'll, you know, chime in as much as I would want to as a gray-haired guy that has 50-year-old children.
Schoolhouse.
I think we need to go back to the neighborhood schools. No, And of course, our town planner, Mr. Goddard, we will augment that and take a little bit of the weight off of David D. Delory.
Is there anyone on the committee that, I know a lot of it, I think David even mentioned it, like, my kids are in their 30s, almost 40, so like, I have absolutely. I think a lot of us have older children who maybe even have children, so like, I don't feel like I could help. And I think that he mentioned that your kids are out of school forever. Is there someone else on this committee currently that feels they have a feel for it that could help out Dave and work with them, you know, like, you know what I mean? I know you already did another section, but.
I was gonna raise my hand on Marcus point me anyway, so.
Wow.
I got 2 kids in the school system, I'll be happy to help out with this.
Oh,
I
awesome.
also have familiar with public facilities, so I can help out with Dave and any other issues, so. I'm on vacation in 2 weeks, but next week I can work with you.
Sounds good.
You're on vacation for 2 weeks?
I'm on vacation this week, and I'm here.
Oh, wow. He gets a gold star. Okay, so it sounds like, got a little bit of that in you. Norm, do you feel a little more comfortable now?
Well, I do, but I got a little bit more to say before I'm done.
What?
But
Okay, take it away.
now that I have this project done, I will be glad to help Scott on economic development,
Excellent.
okay? But I do have a couple of quick things to point out here. On the partially covered slides, the orange slides. Again, they're rated by Norm's significant, medium, minor, granularity, and all of ours are different. But over in the right-hand side, under the comment side, the items in red are the items that I feel aren't covered. So as you go ahead and read these and try to decide whether you want to add anything, the things in red, what I'm saying, they're not covered. Then the last one is conflicting opinions.
Yes, that's interesting.
Okay. The survey was very clear on the fact that we want single family homes. We don't want apartments. We don't want low cost and low income housing. But yet all our action items are the opposite. Now, I'm not saying that's wrong. I'm just saying we need to be aware of that. Case okay. We're doing that because the state, I believe, the state has recommended the health and guidelines we have to be. Okay, but they're against public opinion from the survey.
Yes, since I was involved in writing the housing chapter, I will take it under advisement.
Well, I'm not asking you to change it, but just realize it's different than what the public survey said.
Yeah, I
I would, come on, Green. I would just like to go on record saying that looking at the age of the respondents for the survey does not necessarily reflect what we need 20 years from now, right? So when the average age is over 50, they're not worried about apartments, right? And those kind of things. So we're planning for the future, not for the past.
Yeah, we talked a lot about,
microphone, please, if possible.
we talked a lot about retaining and attracting young families too, which is where we had to go with smaller housing and the one about like smaller lot sizes, and that's why we talked about the 40Y starter home zoning. So again, all these are in contrast to the survey, but it's what we heard at the Did We Hear You with the younger, so we did talk about it.
We considered it
Yeah,
in a great degree, and
we went round and round and round.
yeah. And your last page, Norm? Oh, I like the last page.
I
don't.
Oh, not the very last page.
Okay.
the annual master plan
Yes.
program card, progress card.
Yeah, we have Doug and I decided to put a new action item into our historical and cultural team, and that is strategy to stay focused on the master plan implementation. The action item is at the start of each calendar year. The annual master plan implementation progress card will be filled out. This progress card can be found in a separate appendix of the master plan. The document should be completed for at least 7 years and made available to the public. And the next one is the actual sample scorecard. And for each year, you'll get a number of items that were completed. We'll get since the start, a number of items completed, some completed for both start and the current year. And the headings, as you can see across the top, are a little bit difficult to read, but completed in prior years, completed this year. This action will always be ongoing. This action is on hold. This action item has been canceled. Goal completed, ongoing, canceled. Project was started this year, no activity this year, marginal activity this year, substantial activity this year. An estimate of completion we have to put in the year. And we'll make this available to the public. And we'll keep a focus going forward.
So you put this in just in the historical and cultural chapter.
That's the only place we were.
That was our chapter.
Yeah.
We put
You
some
could vote
specific,
what
we put some specific things in there with even some, I think they might have to move a little bit given where we are in the plan, but with some rough estimated dates that it would be good to see them completed in order to track to the master plan of an end goal. So goal is this, well, we need to start working on this by X date, to have it done by Y date. And it listed the action plus the lead organization and support organizations, if you will. So it might be planning board and support from the cultural council, or, you know, CPC and the select board, or, you know, even third, you know, something, and the civic fund, you name it. It was a way to kind of add some.
Which chapter proposes making an implementation committee, or is that technically?
Chapter, like public services and facilities chapter, there's an action that says establish mechanism looking the master.
Oh, we're gonna have, sure.
It's in the intro.
Yeah, and then Corey mentioned it earlier.
It'll be in the exact summary.
But there is an action which now the progress card, I think is great to add as a, you know, another thing. But there is something that does discuss this. You've created a time frame, which that can presumably be changed on here, but.
Well, wouldn't we want that in the overarching for the whole document to have?
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
So not
Reference
just
it
in
and
a
you put the example in the appendix. We
Right.
gotta make sure that we don't bury our leads in each chapter. And so if anyone wants to look at the progress chart, they can go look at the appendix on page, whatever it ends up being.
Right,
But just saying that, hey, we're not just throwing this over the wall, right? We're gonna hold whoever's next accountable for reporting to the public on, if it's adopted, that this is what we're doing.
right.
But it would apply to all the chapters.
It would apply to. If there's I guess typically, you know, when we establish where this implementation committee may be, where an action may include creating an implementation committee, it would be like the public governance section typically. But if there is something where it's not an action and you want it to just inform what the plan should be doing, then you just remove it as an action. Because in the action, it is specific to sunset the master plan advisory committee charged with the development and replace or choose members for a new implementation committee reporting to the select board or any other entity. use the master plan recommendations and implementation table as a guide for decision making. Convene an annual all town boards, committees, commissions meeting to share progress and implementing the master plan. And discussing change of priorities and plans. But now this progress part and the language that Norm and Doug came up with could also be included here, but if you don't think it should be in a specific section that addresses that, then we can just put it into, as you mentioned, in the summary.
Well, you put it, if you put it, say, in the exact summary in the intro, and then you can say, you know, one example is this. But then the implementation committee may look at it, though, you know, that's too many categories, let's only have 5 categories, or that's not enough categories, whatever. Let them, I mean, it's a recommended template. But they may choose to modify it, but at least it gets, you know, it gets them a starting point. And it's more the concept of it. You know, we feel that you should have a tracking of progress against the plan. Here's an example, feel free to use it.
Yeah, and that would go in the appendix, that would be a document for the appendix.
Yeah,
Once we have,
Oh,
we have a comment,
can't hear?
can you hear me?
Yes.
Would you like to speak?
I just had a question if, about this specifically, just from the last comment, sorry. If it were to go then in the appendix, is there going to be the action items that we currently have at the end of the chapters right next to this so that there can be easy reference for the implementation committee? Is that what we're saying?
Well, what I will do, once we have finalized the total action items, I will put the whole matrix together with the actual chapter and the action item listed on it, so I will do that for us.
no,
Did that address your question?
Yes, thank you. Now I'm just trying to think about you know, how we can make it easy for the implementation committee to be able to just have quick reference and not be going from that part of the appendix back to the chapter, looking up the action item that, you know, 1.2 is. Just having that easily accessible, I think, will make their lives a lot easier. So thank you.
Okay. Then there was one last one. And this is my last one. No. Currently, we have, I think, 124 action items, and I just put this together because I like data. And you can see the planning board is going to be very busy. They have 35 leads, 18 supports, the 53 select board, 17 leads, 38 supports for 55. And you can see the list as it goes down. Now, this will grow a little bit as we go back and hopefully add a few more action items. And then I'll update it for the time. When it's appropriate. And that's all I have to.
Great job.
Thank you, Norm.
Thank you.
Thank you, Norm.
Fabulous, Norm. Thank you.
Amazing. He's our data guy, RNL analyst.
Oh, I got one more thing.
Oh, no.
I forgot.
What?
Please close at 9, Norm.
Yeah,
Okay, this is quick. We have an issue in land use action item 2.1. It cites the report used the town center study in 2010. I don't believe that exists.
No, we updated it to 14. I already
updated
the document.
Okay, cool.
did we find the document? Did you find the document?
14.
Yes,
Okay.
2014, and I updated the file. And any other comments, Don?
Oh, okay,
Okay, good.
yeah,
Now I'm done.
very good.
I have something.
Microphone, please.
John, can you please resend out who's doing what chapters now that some stuff is shifting so that if we have any comments, we know who they actually go to? please?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Okay. Good discussion. Good check on us. And we'll move along to routine business. We have minutes from July 6th of 2023 that I would entertain a motion to approve those minutes.
What date?
Second.
Motion made by Norm Cheever, seconded by Doug Moglen to approve the minutes of July 6th. That was the only meeting we had in July. So we need a roll call vote of those present.
Marcus Phelps,
Aye.
Doug Moglen,
Yes.
Randy Brown,
Yes.
David D. Delory,
Abstain.
Dave McWilliams,
Yep.
Norm Cheever,
Aye.
Alita De Maria.
Abstain. Did we lose sound again?
Yeah, we may have lost sound or they're really quiet.
The minutes, Marissa.
Your turn.
Marissa.
Oh,
Minutes.
I hear you guys really.
Yeah, we can't hear you.
Thank you. With that vote, with 2 abstentions, the minutes approval passed by majority. Okay, last item, committee member comments. I have 2. Mr. Chair, I already made the announcement that Patrick Judd had submitted a resignation from the committee. We're at the stage, we're at the 3-yard line. No. Bases are loaded and, anyway, I don't know what we would do as far as getting a replacement, if it would be worth the effort, so to speak. I guess John just communicate with that appointing authority and see what they might do. Action. That's
Sorry, Marcus, we didn't hear any of that.
Justice.
Not so easy, is it?
Just, I see a red light. It's probably dead.
No, we just, it's not.
It said red.
I had a red light.
Cause you have to press it to turn it.
You know, the secret answer.
Yeah.
all right, repeating my last.
Can you hear us now, Marissa?
Yeah. Patrick Judd has submitted his resignation to the committee. And I guess at this point, I was asking John Goddard to go back to the appointing authority, which would be the school board, to see if they want to replace Patrick. We are kind of at the end of the game here, but they certainly should have the opportunity to have someone else here to comment and review whatever we're producing. So that's what I was saying there. And then the only other thing was I was gonna hand it to John to talk about administrative matters. John.
It's gonna take some.
Oh, John's not trusting this microphone.
No.
Oh, it's you.
Yes.
What sort of administrative matters are we talking about? Let's talk first about, committee members. I will be reaching out to, so for those of you that were nominated by the respective boards and commissions, as we are operating in a new year, into the new year, I need your respective boards and commissions to re-up so that I may report that to the town clerk. So that's that chunk right there. I say it out loud now as a reminder to us as a group, and we'll see if we can get this picked up at your next prospective meeting. Resident members have already been re-nominated to continue in that role by the planning board. What's other?
So then everyone has to be sworn in.
That is
The
correct.
town clerk will be aware of that.
I don't think so.
No,
The town clerk seems to be, provide plenty of clarification, everyone.
okay.
Mr. Goddard,
Yes, sir.
Last year. We did it last year.
I don't see any problem with doing it like that. However, it's also my understanding that if you're appointed to a board and your term has expired, your term continues until a successor is named. And if we're not doing that, I don't think I could be wrong. And so don't rely on what I just said, but I had a discussion with Michelle Hill regarding appointments for other boards and commissions, and that we have terms that expired on June 30th, but those boards and commissions have continued to meet totally above board, totally legal, until the appointing authority moves to reappoint or appoint other members, those terms continue. That's what she told me just this last week. So since we're in the
I think you
top
two
of the
have-
third
you
quarter.
I got the microphone. There's nothing I like better than the debate in the last few moments of, no, that's perfectly fine. It appears we have conflicting information.
I go with his.
No, we will get the clarification. I will provide it to everyone. And we can take action from that.
I would think you couldn't get sworn in again until your board actually said, oh, yeah,
Yeah, you have to be appointed, then sworn in, because your name won't be in the book unless your board acts.
right.
Correct.
So John's gonna handle all that, I'm sure. That's why we recognize you in the acknowledgement section of the master plan. Your name is in there as helping us with the administrative procedures, which
If you
are
call this a
no small matter. All right, who else would like the microphone?
If you don't mind, first off, regarding the swearing in, I mean, if you're gonna have a meeting, just get renominated by your board. It takes 2 minutes, just get it done. I don't think it's a big issue and it covers our bases regardless. So that's not really what I want to talk about, but we've been talking about a lot about the implementation plan, and I guess I'm curious as to who is appointing the implementation plan. I heard select board and planning board. Who do they fall under? And how long is a typical term on an implementation plan? Are we putting it together for 3 years, 5 years, 7 years? Is it supposed to span the 20 years of the master plan? I would like to know something.
Oh, yeah. Well, this committee was jointly appointed, I believe, by the planning board and the board of select board. So, I guess maybe that's a discussion for Mr. Doherty, who's the chair of the planning board, to engage.
Ken, do you know? Who's
Does
supposed to
Mr.
select-
Kania have any ideas or what happens in other communities?
It usually is a joint effort. There's some sort of coordination and consultation typically with the planning board, but I think it's because the select board does the appointments for, I guess, any committee or ad hoc committees, let's say, that presumably it starts there, but the consultation probably will be coming from multiple, you know.
And the length of the term?
The length of the term, I think it's just ensuring that there's a committee member from each, or a member from the committees, the various committees, or the entities that would make it that board. So presumably, if there's someone there, if they want to get out, then you're gonna have to appoint someone.
No, I guess my question is, how long do these committees stay formed? Is it a short-term implementation committee, or should it coincide with the length of the?
So how long is the implementation committee in operation?
That's a good question, because I think in the experience of other communities, they're gung ho right at the beginning, and then all of a sudden, and their energy fades like year 3, right? And then all of a sudden, year 7 comes and they're like, let's talk about the master plan. And then they try to, create that system again. Ongoing, I mean, I think maybe it is, and that initial group can probably dictate how long it wants to be, but. I mean, I think it's just like an ongoing conversation, depending on, the appetite of the town and the momentum of the town, pursuing that work.
It's interesting too, might be worthwhile to say it's a 3-year appointment or something to that effect, rather than an annual appointment, because the advisory committee, it seems like we got caught in some kind of administrative, issue related to the needing to be appointed annually, appoint for 3 years, whatever, but it sounds like things start to tail off. If it's too long, we kind of need to be re-energized.
I just think we need to start thinking about that.
All right,
One last input.
Mr. Chief.
Now that we're gonna go back and look at chapters for possible additional action items, what's our deadline?
We still have to get it done to be able to get.
What was that, Rocky?
I said, we still have to keep moving it along at pretty much the same.
Yeah, I would say,
If someone has comments, they need to get them out.
get it done within, let's see. By, the end of next week,
Yeah,
or you folks. Yeah,
I mean, if you have comments, we need them ASAP.
Yeah.
Basically, but-
as soon as possible, but we're realizing that a couple of the chapters need to be worked on a little more than others, yeah. Because you need to have enough, well, you've got plenty to put together, for the Monday before our next meeting, August 17th.
Yeah, and I think as I mentioned earlier, the thing that's gonna happen is you're gonna have a formatted chapter that you can still make edits to. In line, I mean, if there are large comments, then I guess the committee will address that, but instead of looking at that Word document, you'll be looking at, what's going to end up being printed. And obviously there'll be some edits, hopefully minor, by the time we get to that point.
So on the August 17th meeting, we're gonna look at the chapters.
Yeah, you will have.
The committee as a whole will view the chapter, and if there's any huge thing that, is glaring and needs to be addressed, then someone needs to speak out or whatever, and we resolve it. But, it's a challenge to look at 100 pages or whatever, in one sitting, so we'll see how it goes. We certainly appreciate folks coming out and making a quorum. Okay, I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make it one. I'll second.
I just had one quick comment, if you don't
sorry.
mind. It's all right. Just to address Dave's point, I thought we had always kind of discussed, and it probably bears more discussion from where how the master plan implementation committee is derived, and perhaps the MPAC as a group, maybe at our next meeting, could weigh in on what the composition of that board might look like. Just by, I think at law, the select board is the appointing authority for almost any any subcommittee, especially ad hoc, or it's delegated thereof. But looking at the organizations by assignment, okay, your planning board is elected, your select board, conservation is appointed, AgCom is appointed, DPW is at the direction of the select board, EDC is appointed by the select board, historical is appointed by the select board, police department appointed by the select board, LMC, et cetera, et cetera. You've got Board of Health that's elected, cultural council is appointed by the select board, housing authority is elected The tree warden's a really nice guy, but he's also appointed by the select board. Community preservation is elected, buildings and grounds is an employee of the town or a department head under the select board. So I think it's gonna be by mutual agreement as to, you know, what the implementation committee, and I think the select board would probably have a member. The planning board may have two members because they're a lead authority, but they operate under chapter 185 for zoning primarily and their own chapter 315 for subdivision control law. So they're gonna try to focus on their areas of zoning. Same thing with conservation under the laws in which they operate as well. That'd be my take on it. And I think it's something that should come out of this group to kind of steer that in the right direction, especially if there's concern. We should address it head on and make sure we get it right. Because I certainly, and for a term, I think a year or two is good. And I think because if it does tend to wane, it gives you the opportunity to bring new blood into it by whomever or whatever is the appointing authority. It also would account for, as if you were a designated member and, you know, you would then be on for 2 years. Say you're on the Conservation Commission, which is a 3-year term. You could serve 2 of those 3 or maybe not concomitant with your term. So I think it would be beneficial. 2 years seems reasonable to me.
Thank you. Someone made a motion to adjourn.
I'll second
Who
it
was
then.
that?
One of us-
I think it was Roz.
I love to make that motion. and-
Give it to Raj.
Make that
Go,
motion to
Raj.
adjourn.
Roz, Terry made
I
a
like
motion
it.
to adjourn, Doug Mogul seconded, all those in favor.
Aye. Right on, right on.